What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're taking a bit of a break from the Battlefield 6 videos, and instead we're going to be covering some very important Black Ops 7 news, some key changes that were announced yesterday that are going to be taking place for the launch of the game based on tons of beta feedback. And let's just dive right into this with the dexterity changes. As you guys may remember, in the beta build of the game, if you wanted to aim down sight while sliding, diving, or wall jumping, you had to use the dexterity perk, and that made it a crutch for many players out there. And many people weren't really a big fan of that. So Treyarch has decided they're just going to build that back in by default. So when the game launches, you won't need to run a perk in order to aim down sight and slide, dive, or wall jump at the same time. However, it was mentioned that dexterity will allow you to do those things more effectively, so faster. Perhaps there will be some accuracy improvements there as well using dexterity while performing these actions, even though they didn't explicitly state that. That's how it works in Black Ops 6, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they keep that characteristic with dexterity as well. But that's great news. That was one of the bigger gameplay-related complaints I saw throughout the beta, alongside a bunch of other perk changes, which we'll get into in just a little bit. There's some really big ones there. But the next thing they shared is they are slightly increasing the footstep volume from the beta build of the game. And normally with Call of Duty, if I hear that they're increasing footstep volume, I am not going to be happy about that because I don't like it when footsteps are too loud. However, footsteps were way too quiet in the beta build of the game, in my opinion. It was some of the feedback that I shared as well. There were too many situations where enemies could sprint right up behind you with no ninja perk on, and you wouldn't hear a thing. So they said they've slightly increased this, and they're happy with where it's at. They were also clear to state that this was just a slight improvement, and essentially they wanted to balance it in a way to where it didn't feel like ninja was a necessary perk. Now after that, when it comes to the slide, they've mentioned they are slightly reducing the distance and the speed of the slide, but it still feels really good and fluid, apparently. Obviously, we'll have to wait to get our hands on it to see how it actually feels, but that's another thing where I'm on board with this. I think the slide was still a little overboard, and I know there's a certain group of players that are going to be unhappy to see that, but I think for the overall health and balance of the game, this is a good thing, depending on how far they've taken it, of course. I wouldn't want them to take this too far the other direction, but they did state it was a slight adjustment. So time will tell on that one. Next up, something that I've been providing feedback on throughout the life cycle of Black Ops 6, and in the beta for Black Ops 7, I had the same issue. This was to mantle speeds. It just feels like with the pacing of everything else that's going on in the game, mantle speeds were way too slow. It's like you could do so many things so quickly like a super soldier, but if you want to climb over a ledge, suddenly you're an 80-year-old man and everything just slows down to a crawl. So it's nice to see they stated they are improving mantle speeds across the board. I'd also still be fine with that being attached to a perk, especially something like dexterity now that they've effectively nerfed dexterity pretty hard by not requiring it to aim down sight while performing certain actions. I'd be totally on board with that improving our mantle speeds. However, an across-the-board adjustment without any perks, that also sounds good to me. And now let's get into the many perk changes that they've made here, and I'm really happy to see this. So much of this is feedback I provided directly. It's exactly what I wanted to see, so I'm happy about that. Let's first start this off with how they've shuffled perks around again to different tiers, but there's more to it than just this, so just hang in there. As we can see here, these are our new tiers of perks. And we can see Tac Sprinter was moved from tier 3 into tier 1. Gearhead was moved from tier 2 into tier 1. Scavenger was moved out of tier 1 and into tier 2. Same thing with Tech Mask that used to be tier 1, now it's tier 2. Then in tier 3, we now have Dexterity moved from tier 1, and it's much more appropriate in this tier now that it's far less powerful. Looper was moved from tier 2 into tier 3, and Cold-Blooded, thankfully, was moved out of tier 1 and into tier 3 as well, so you can now actually have a full stealth loadout. If you use a wildcard, you can use Ghost, Ninja, and Cold-Blooded, and I absolutely wanted to see that. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these changes. More importantly, one of the big pieces of feedback I had from the beta, and a lot of this actually applies to Black Ops 6 perks as well, is it seems like many of the perks in the game are far too niche. They feel like half perks. Like, why would I ever use something that's gonna maybe help me in the odd situation every couple of games compared to something in the same tier of perks that's gonna be helping me consistently throughout a match? So they've taken that feedback into account and they've actually combined some of the perks, and I like these combinations. So let's start it off with Gearhead. This now also includes the Quartermaster perk. So they removed Quartermaster from the game, moved its effects over to Gearhead, and then now that that makes it quite a bit more powerful, it makes more sense here in tier 1. Then with Assassin, this absorbed Vendetta, which I think is another great change. These perks work really well together, and Vendetta was such a weird, weak perk in my opinion. But having the benefits of that just attached to another perk, I think is totally fine and makes way more sense. Then with Close Shave, this perk absorbed the Bruiser perk, which is also excellent. Those go really well together. since they're both melee oriented and they're both quite niche as well. I couldn't really see myself using any of these individually on my class, but combined, maybe. That's a little bit more attractive. Then with Engineer, this one absorbed the effects of Shadow. So not only do you have all the same effects that we had previously with Engineer, now you also won't trigger enemy deployed equipment that requires a trigger. So that's going to make Engineer a lot more attractive. And then finally, when it comes to Tracker, this absorbed the benefits of Hunter's Instinct as well. And again, this just makes sense. It really seems like they've carefully thought these changes through. I love the fact that they've combined some of these perks. It makes it less cluttered feeling, and there are now some more real choices to be making in each of these tiers, now that many of these perks have become quite a bit more powerful, with them absorbing the benefits of other previous perks. So overall, I'm very happy to see these changes they're making to perks. This was one area where I never really thought they were going to make any major changes like they did. I thought maybe we'd see some slight improvements, maybe they'd shuffle a couple perks around, but in doing so, we'd never end up with a great perk system. However, now that they've done this is looking significantly better, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing here. And at least so far, I'm not seeing any glaring issues here with this new structure of their perk system. So very happy with that. Next, let's talk about a big one, aim assist. They are looking into making some aim assist changes. The first thing they shared here is just some data that they collected from the beta, and I'm not too surprised to see this, but in close quarters engagements, controller players were winning slightly more than mouse and keyboard players, whereas for longer range engagements, mouse and keyboard players were winning slightly more than controller players. And so what they said they want to do is to close that gap a little bit, and the first thing they're looking at is simply adjusting the strength of aim assist across all of those ranges. And to me, since they also said they're trying to close that gap, it sounds like we may be seeing aim assist nerfs in close quarters engagements, and maybe even a bit of a buff to aim assist at longer ranges to close that gap between controller and mouse and keyboard in those ranges where mouse and keyboard is currently winning. That's not all though. When it comes to rotational aim assist, they are currently looking into requiring right stick input, so the actual aiming input, not just your moving input. They're looking into making it so you have to be moving your right stick in the direction of the enemy player in order to activate rotational aim assist, because as it is right now, you don't even need to touch your aiming stick at all. All you have to do is move your feet, and the game will automatically rotate to track enemy players. That's how rotational aim assist has always worked in Call of Duty, by the way. There are some misconceptions surrounding that. Go back to COD 4, it works exactly the same, and it's just as strong within the ranges where it was active. The big buff with Modern Warfare 2019 was the active range was massively increased. But it looks like we are going to be seeing some adjustments to aim assist. However, this was all phrased as, this is what we're looking into changing, and they're going to be sharing some more concrete details on what they're actually going to be changing soon. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for all of the updates we got yesterday and changes we can expect from beta to launch. And all of this combined with all of the beta changes that they've already announced at the end of the beta, including the fact that our default matchmaking is going to be the matchmaking from the open playlist in the beta, so classic Call of Duty matchmaking, and persistent lobbies are coming back by default as well. When I combine all of that with the changes they've announced here today, I'm honestly out of things to complain about. I can't really think of anything outside of some maybe really small nitpicky things that I want to see changed outside of what they've already mentioned here. Now, to be clear, I'm still a little bit nervous and skeptical about the fact that the SBMM changes and the persistent lobby changes we're going to be seeing at launch, and we don't know if that's going to last, or if it's just something they're going to be trying at launch, maybe to bait some players into buying the game, and then over time it's going to end up just reverting back to the matchmaking system we've been dealing with in recent years, as well as disbanding lobbies again. Obviously, I do have some concerns when it comes to that, but just based on everything we're seeing so far and how they've been reacting to the feedback, like I said, I'm out of things to complain about. Like, what other bits of feedback did we provide that they haven't listened to and made some solid adjustments to? Once again, I've got to say, thank you, Battlefield. I love competition because I think that's really what's pushing them to be so responsive to feedback. I don't think we've ever seen this many changes from beta till launch for a Call of Duty game. Especially some reasonably deep changes here too. These aren't just surface level changes in many cases. So despite the fact that in the community there still seems to be fairly little interest in Black Ops 7, at the end of the day, this game is really shaping up to be like my dream Call of Duty game, assuming things go well at launch and that matchmaking's here to stay and persistent lobbies are here to stay. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about these changes that they just announced yesterday, like to the perks, the aim assist, dexterity, or anything else? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.